Hello, everybody. This is International Master Sam Shankland, and today I would like to talk about how to become a better Blitz player. So it's a very interesting question, and there's many strategies, and you have to find sort of the one that matches you. But I think that basically there's two ways to improve your Blitz. You can improve your Blitz by improving your chess, just becoming a better chess player, and that will translate to Blitz. If you do tactics problems, this will help you in chess and in Blitz, or research your openings or study endgames. Uh, Both in regular chess and in speed chess, your results should improve. But if you want to just improve your Blitz, then it's kind of you can kind of take a different strategy. So there's one person or character I know of, plays on ICC, named Yakov Norowitz, and he's a decent chess player. He's about 2350, I believe, USCF, maybe 2300 FIDE. But in Blitz on ICC, he routinely plays and does fine against some of the best grandmasters in the world. So the way he does it is he has this same little thing. It's sort of a junk opening, called the Stonewall. D4, D5. He plays a stupid move E3 and something like Knight F6, F4. But his point is here. His plan is very simple. He's going to play moves like C3, Bishop D3, Knight D2, Knight F3, Castle, and maybe he'll play Knight E5 and try to force an attack. For example, let's say Black tries to play aggressive. C5, C3, Knight C6, Bishop D3. It's very hard to see how Black's going to really, even if we set up sort of a King's Indian. Knight F3, Bishop G7, Castle, Castle, Knight D2. It's very hard to see how Black's going to continue, while White's plan is often very clear. Let's say maybe Knight to E5, possibly bring the, not Queen F1, Queen E1 to H4, bring the Queen in. It's very easy for White to just make moves. He doesn't need to be a grandmaster to play like moves like these. And in other positions, like for example, if you were to play d4 but do it more conventionally, like let's say d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, bishop b4, we get sort of a queen's gambit declined, like very kind of very interesting game. And this is sort of the type of opening that I guess you'd sort of want to avoid if you're playing a really good player, because not only will they know more theory than you, but they'll understand the position better. And because for both sides here, it's going to be hard to find the best moves, oftentimes the grandmaster will have an advantage over the weaker player. I mean, more so than they might normally. But in this little junk opening after e3, knight f6, f4, it's pretty easy for White to find, if not the best moves, really good moves. So I would not suggest employing this strategy in a real game, because you're completely giving up anything you have with White, any sort of hope for an advantage. And Black will get a perfectly playable game, although his position's a little bit more difficult to play. He's not going to have an incredibly hard time playing it. And in a tournament game, when they have plenty of time, Black will be able to find the best moves pretty easily. And you can't really expect much out of the opening, and you might even get an unpleasant position with this big gaping hole on e4. So now this there is sort of a middle ground, which is actually something that I've kind of employed. And for example, in a recent game I played in Chicago against a strong young talent from the United States, Darwin Yang, I played d4, d5, but I played c4, so plays the Slav, and then we got to a sort of what is looking like could be a Moran type of thing, but I played b3 here. So this is maybe not the most ambitious move, but I think it's a fine move. And after knight b d7, bishop b2, bishop e7, bishop d3, castle, castle, b6, knight c3, bishop b7, queen c2, queen c7, or sorry, no, rook c8 first, rook a d1, and queen c7. I play knight e5, notice he can't really take it because if he takes back with the queen, I have knight takes d5 with a discovered attack, winning my pawn back. And if he takes c4 first here, after bc4, queen e5, knight d5, I'm actually winning because after queen d6, I can take on f6. If black takes back, I take h7 check, and I pick up the queen. So that's a sort of a brief tactical thing. But so in the game, Darwin played rook fd8. But after f4, I kind of have a similar position to this sort of like Norwich Stonewall kind of thing, except counterplay with c5 won't be as effective because that might, if I ever take it, it will open up my bishop. And I have really good control of the e4 square, so he doesn't really have a chance to drop anything in there. And this is kind of like the middle ground. It's maybe not the most ambitious way to play real chess, but it definitely can bring good results because it's not just solely basically for easy play and tricks, which is kind of what, although it's kind of sad, what you would want if you're just trying to improve your blitz rather than your chess on the whole, which, of course, if you're a better chess player, you're likely to become a better blitz player. So, and there's plenty of such things. So, for example, as black, I play the Sicilian defense, e4, c5. Now, I'm capable of playing other moves than c5. Like in real games, I've played the French, I've played the Roy Lopez with e6 and with e5. But I think that in blitz, almost certainly I'll be better off playing c5, not only because I think it's maybe my better move, but because I can't be thrown off. For example, against e5, there's knight f3, let's say, knight c6, knight c3, rather than the Roy Lopez. And then knight f6, d4, take d4, and knight d5. I've seen this opening a few times. I know it's garbage. This is not something white can really play and expect any kind of advantage. But I don't know all the theory behind it. I think, if I was playing against this in a real game, I'd be very comfortable and I would find a way to quickly equalize and get a fine position. But in a blitz game, this is a lot less likely to happen because you just don't have as much time to figure everything out, especially while your opponent is basically still playing like Ribka because they have all their preparation ready. Now let's take another example. In the Sicilian, after let's say e4, c5, let's say white plays sort of the Grand Prix type thing. This often is a good choice against the Sicilian, at least in blitz, because your play is pretty easy. You play moves like knight f3, bishop c4, castle, queen e1 to h4. So, for example, let's say something like d6, knight f3, g6, bishop c4, bishop g7, castle, knight f6, d3, castle, queen e1. White's going to play queen h4 and then try to play f5, bishop h6. He's got a reasonable attack or some kind of attacking scheme. But I would feel more comfortable against this because it's a more natural position to play. It's sort of something that kind of resembles things I've already looked at or stuff like that. So, for black, I might, after castles, realize knight f6 maybe is an okay move, but what if I play e6? It can quickly realize that if white's going to attack on the king side, black should counterattack in the center. And it's easy to generate this counterattack here. And so this is kind of like a really important theme that you maybe want to try something a little bit more offbeat and easier to play, but you have to pick your battles because this one, if black knows to play e6 and knight e7, the position is probably very easy for him to play as well. So here I'm going to take a major risk in terms of the video, and I'm going to play a couple blitz games. One where I sort of play very, very, very conventionally, and possibly in a line I don't know too well, and another in sort of like a very solid, but not as not as like good line, but solid and easier to play. So get ready, here it comes. Should be starting soon. I'm just waiting for an opponent. Okay, here we go. Okay, so my opponent played e4. I'm going to play e5 because this is sort of something I don't know as well, although it's a fine system. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, knight c6. There we go. You see already it's the Scotch game, which I don't know too well. So let's see what happens. C takes d4. Okay, I guess I'll play bishop c. Yeah, already here I'm not quite sure what to do. I don't want to take back with the b pawn necessarily, but I definitely don't want to take back with the d pawn. I think queen f6 is the move here, but again, I'm not quite sure. Okay, so already I have no idea what's going on. It's quite likely my opponent is still in opening theory, and although it's my position, I think my position is okay right now. In the long term, he does have a pawn majority that I can't really counter. Okay, well, you see here we got to a position where it was a little bit harder for white to play, although than you might expect, because here it looks like he's blundered bishop takes f2 check. So, although I think maybe it's because my opponent, it looks like, is only 2200 here on ICC. That might have helped me get such a leading position so easily, but I think if you look back earlier at the game, I guess it's only 11 moves, is kind of funny, but if you look back earlier, it felt like I already was in some sort of unpleasant position, and I needed my opponent to make that mistake in order to get anything going. And okay, here it looks like I just have a really good position, but we'll keep looking just to try to look at technique and seeing for maybe swindle chances. So I still, while I'm with a pawn, it's still a double pawn. I can't make majority just yet. So the game is not yet over. So here it feels like black should have an advantage, of course, but trying to push it farther is going to be tricky. So what I'm looking at is sort of the weak points in white's position real quick. You know, it's a 5-minute game. I have about 3 minutes left right now. What I want to do is, I see e4 as a weak point, and I see that I have control of the d file. So this bishop on d3 looks very solid. And while my bishop on e6 is good, I think it'd be good for me to trade. Also, that would let me play c5 possibly, so I'm going to play bishop c4. Okay, so one thing I just noticed now, this is something you should be doing, is thinking on your opponent's time. Knight d5, yeah, that's kind of unpleasant. And although here I think I have e takes d5, which is winning. Instead of knight d5, I think b takes a5 followed by rook b4 was also quite interesting. Although here, now though before I got an advantage at this point, I think my opponent could healthily resign because he's just going to be losing a lot of material. In fact, I suspect he might do that right now. Okay, or not. You know, it's to each his own, on one to his own. Maybe he'll play rook b2, allowing knight e4 checkmate. Check, and then I take. Notice he can't take with the king because of bishop d3 check. Just sort of playing for tactics. He could at any point fall for something. So here I'll push my passed pawns, try to get him going. Now he does this. And after this check, one thing I notice here is that his rook on a1 is almost hopelessly passive. Okay, he just resigned now because the position is clearly hopeless for him. So I guess that was kind of a bad example. You know, I took a risk by trying to play a blitz game and play something I didn't know. But if you look back earlier at the game, like all the way back to the beginning after. At this point, I didn't know what to do. And I think in the long term, if my opponent doesn't mess up, he'll probably retain an advantage because of his ability to make a passed pawn with these 4 pawns against these 3 here. While my doubled pawns on c7 and c6 will not be able to make a passed pawn. For more on that, you can check out other videos by, I believe, FM Zerk is doing videos on merits of doubled pawns and pawn endgames. So, although my opponent messed up later on by playing bishop d2, allowing, my guess when he played bishop d2 is he was hoping someday to castle queenside. If instead he had just played something like castle short, I think he would probably retain a healthy, happy position. Another possibility would be something like bishop g5. In any case, I think it's quite a pleasant position for white, and it's not really what black should be shooting for. So I'm going to play another game. And here I'm going to sort of play like the stupid little system that I was talking about before, which is kind of offbeat and not very normal, but maybe playable. So here I already know basically what all my next moves are. I will barely have to think. So to watch out, make sure he doesn't ever play e4 on me, and my position will be fine. So let's take this way, and open up the F file, and then stop e4. The F file has now been opened, so I have potential to attack. Okay, he's still not really threatening to do anything, so I'll play knight c4, eyeing the pawn and looking at the d6 square. Okay, so he's taking. Okay, so at this point I have an open F file and a queenside majority. It seems like I have a pretty happy position. So, start to develop an initiative. My next move is probably going to be queen f3. Okay, well if he does that, I'll take, and I play queen f3, and it looks like he has too many pieces on breeze. Okay, so he tried taking d4, I'll take back, and now I think he doesn't have much to do here. He can take my knight, but then I'll take his knight. He'll be down in exchange. Look at that. We're not even a minute into the game, and already his position is miserable. And I think I basically have a close to winning advantage. Compare that to the last game where I played a more conventional system, albeit one I didn't know that well, where I basically just lost right away, or didn't lose, but I got a worse position, or one I wasn't too comfortable with pretty quickly. And in Blitz, it's important to have a position that you're comfortable with. So here it looks like he's just letting me take all his stuff and checkmate him. So this was sort of intuition. I was thinking, because his queen is so far away that I'll be able to checkmate. It looks like I was maybe a little bit over-optimistic, but even still, he can't really do anything. So I'll just play rook f7 next move, and it's going to be very hard for him to defend. His pawns on the queen side are very slow. You would not have had to do this if you didn't want to. You can just play it slowly if you prefer. So here he won't really have he can check me on any A1, B1, or C1, but he won't really have a follow-up check that does anything. Right now I'm already threatening to win my pawn back on B7. So like here, well, this might not have been the best thing to do in a real game, to like sacrifice the exchange right back. In a real game, you could have just tried to win with the exchange. In Blitz, like if you look at this position with this rook on the 7th rank, it's very difficult to see how black will really be able to defend. In a real game, maybe he'd find some resource, but in a Blitz game, it's much harder. So he's already burning a lot of time on the clock. Okay, so eventually he played that move. Now I'll just take his pawn back. I've equalized material and I still maintain a dominating position. Notice if he plays rook to g7, I have rook to b8, mate to follow. Oh, he plays queen c1, he's got a trick. his idea is he wants to try to give a perpetual check. And while I think I might have to allow this, we will have to see. So let's say at this point maybe I should allow it because I can admit I messed up in a blitz game. That happens, but let's see what happens if I don't. I'm worried for the safety of my rook. Might run into issues. So if I move my king to f2, maybe he'll play rook to f8 check. And then suddenly it looks like I'm getting checkmated. So I think at this point it's time to play king h2 and offer a draw. Okay, and the draw was taken. So yeah, I took a risk in playing a couple blitz games. It did not pay off. For one thing, my second opponent was quite a bit stronger than my first opponent. But if you look at this game earlier on, basically with barely even thinking, just avoiding the e4 threat and opening the f file, I quickly achieved a dominant position. And this is not something you should be doing in real chess, but here in Blitz, 18 moves in and about a minute into the game, I'm up in exchange for a pawn for little to no compensation. And after bishop takes, well, I guess sort of my attacking instincts came out here. I think instead of rook ae1, perhaps I could just play something like queen f2, and slowly but surely make my rooks really active on the c and d files. And I was somehow maybe worried about black counterplay, but that was a little bit silly. So I got a little bit too practical in this case. I think if I just play queen f2, I retain a really good position with excellent winning chances. So that was my big mistake this game. And but the point is, the way I opened up the game was, Blitz, there's every part of the game is important in Blitz, but it's really bad if you're, it's at least if you're playing against a human, you'll be making mistakes. They'll be making mistakes for sure. Like here I am, almost a grandmaster. I made a mistake with rook a to e1. In this position, I made a mistake. Now, in the beginning of the game, in the opening, your opponent won't make a mistake if they're still using their computer's analysis that they happen to remember. So that's why it's important to try to get an easy position to play if your opening is going to possibly run into some serious prep, which you really don't want. And later on in the game, you want to look out for tricks and stuff, but also you want to really think, like, I guess I was overambitious here, thinking this attack would be unstoppable, but I was wrong. One other thing I should have thought about when I played h3 was, well, the only reason I did this was so I could bring my rook into the attack by making an escape square for my king. But it probably would have been better to make 2 escape squares for the king, so after that queen f4 check, nothing bad would have happened. So for example, if the game continued like it did, queen b2, rook f7, rook g8, rook takes b7. If queen c1, I could have run up to h3 and been okay. My king looks a little bit exposed here, but it's, at least to me, it's quite clear that the black king is in much more trouble than the white king. And that's something to keep in mind. Just king safety is more important in Blitz than real chess because there's a lot more tactics involved. In conclusion, I'll just make a new game again. So I think that it's just important to get a position you're comfortable with, and if your theory is really strong, that's a good way to get a position that you'll be comfortable with. But if your theory isn't that strong, then you probably should just play one of these silly little systems. I mean, look at how this 2300 player is playing against all of these grandmasters and having fine results. And also, one thing about Blitz is, while regular chess and Blitz are very different, the better you get at regular chess, it's likely you're going to be getting that much better at Blitz as well. So I think if you want to specifically improve just your practical results for the moment, I guess if I were to make a really, really bad analogy, I guess sort of like playing a little bit of these unambitious systems where it's easy to play is kind of like taking steroids, while if you really get better at chess, it's kind of like working out and building the muscle for real. Although, since it's of course not actually steroids to do that, it's completely legal and everything, I would say that's something you can use. And as you get better at chess, that's more, and hopefully eventually you'll have huge, big, bulging muscles that will rip your shirt, and then be able for you to show them off. If I were to continue the analogy, that would okay. I'm sorry, that sounded really stupid, but I think I've basically made my point clear that that's one of the important parts of Blitz, and I don't have any other amazing tips for now other than just practice. And good luck in your endeavors with Blitz, and thanks.